The Flower of Life is a clumsy New Age hoax, and I'm going to prove it to you today. I think I just heard everyone in Sedona collectively crap their linen pants. So unclench that amethyst, rain stick, spirit dancer. I'm going to open a portal to reality so we can examine the facts. If you've been following any of the spiritual psychosis that's being pushed by various billion-dollar hedge fund-funded podcasts these days, you know that talking heads like Terrence Howard are out there pushing the false idea that the so-called Flower of Life is some mysterious ancient concept that is supposedly being kept under wraps by the powers that be to keep us all deprived of our God-given talents and powers and flying around in cars and shit. I'm not against the premise that various information is kept from the rest of humanity to keep them under wraps. Of course it is. We all know this. But to paraphrase Joe Rogan himself, people are full of crap, and that story sucks. And when I show you the facts about the Flower of Life and what it really is, you'll realize that people like Terrence Howard are just playing themselves with fantasy nonsense and a whole lot of patting themselves on the back for nothing. So where does this design, 19 interlocking circles surrounded by another circle, actually come from? This is Abydos. According to canon, this is where the Gould brought the original Tari as a slave species to mine Naquita. And then after the battle, Colonel Jack O'Neill sent a nuke to Ra's ship and...
Stargate.
What?
The movie Stargate.
Oh. Minor correction. This is the real Abydos, an area of modern Egypt that still contains the remains of the ancient Egyptian city of Abydos. Ancient Abydos was a very important center for worship and had some beautiful structures, but one structure in particular is our focus here. This structure is known as the Osirion, and to this day archaeologists and Egyptologists don't really know much about it. Even the name Osirion is a bit of a misnomer. It's a shot in the dark because it contained a depiction of Osiris, but they don't have any real attribution for when this was built or who it was built by. As you can see, it's an underground structure, and when they rediscovered it, part of the roof had already been removed and it was filled in with sand and other debris. And they don't really know how long ago it had been dismantled and opened to the elements. And when they began excavations in the early 1900s, they made meticulous excavation reports of everything that was taken out, all of the carvings, and all of the graffiti. And how this Flower of Life fits into all this is that it's found in that structure as part of that graffiti. Here you can see the columns that are about 13 feet tall, and on two of the columns there are multiple depictions of these circular designs along with a lot of Greek graffiti that is written in red ochre paint. In this one specific area between two columns, there are over a dozen Flower of Life-ish circular designs that have been drawn on the columns, and if you go to the internet, you'll find all kinds of fanciful stories from charlatans like Nassim Haramein that are telling you that these were laser etched onto the stone, and how it was done is so mysterious, or that they were impregnated in the stone with some mysterious chemical process. And that's just pure nonsense. They were drawn on with the same red ochre paint as the rest of the graffiti. And as I just mentioned, this graffiti is at the top of 13-foot columns that is well above human head height. You couldn't reach it if you were standing at the bottom. So whoever was sitting between these two columns, drawn away, was sitting on top of all the sand and all the debris that had accumulated in the many centuries after the top of this thing was ripped off. Most of these circular designs aren't anywhere near perfect, so it's very clear to me that people are being very selective in the ones that they're looking at. Because if you saw the ones that were on the other column on the opposite side, you'd see that somebody was sitting there hand drawing it, that they're not perfect at all, and that the Greek lettering that is next to them looks like it was written by an 8-year-old. When seen in this light, the claims that are being made about these inscriptions are pretty ridiculous. I've seen everything including, Pythagoras must have gone there from ancient Greece and done these designs himself. I mean, sure, okay, how about the Count Saint Germain went there with Dumbledore and Big Bird on holiday? Sure, anything we can say to sound mysterious and get laid, right? It's easy to make a claim about something when you pick and choose the graffiti that you're actually showing people. But taken in this context and looking at all of it, it's just people that were there doodling on rocks, just like we used to do in grade school on our notebooks. We drew geometric designs as well. Didn't mean that we were great Greek philosophers that were on some sacred pilgrimage to the Holy Land. For people to get up and say that this design was written on an ancient Egyptian temple, and therefore it must be part of their ancient legacy and wisdom that has been suppressed, is just a desperate attempt to give legitimacy to this design that had nothing to do with the original temple. It's a half-truth at best, and it's designed to deceive you. It's like saying that some teenage kid that breaks into a derelict factory and tags the walls is making a true representation of what that original company thought and believed. It's just nonsense. Now, there's some other context around this graffiti that might trigger some people, so if you're easily offended, just shoo off and watch some Disney+. In the Osirion, there's several different areas, and they all have different types of carvings and depictions within them. In the large open area with the pillars, there are carvings on the wall with Egyptian hieroglyphs and Egyptian depictions that are actually carved into the wall. It's believed that these were original to the structure, that they were Old Kingdom Egyptian, and again, the Flower of Life graffiti doesn't match these at all. It's nowhere near stylistically the same as those. But there are other areas of the Osirion, like a covered hallway that leads down into the underground structure. And in this hallway, there are ancient Egyptian paintings on the wall that all match up in style and in coloration, etc. And drawn over that original artwork, we see the same red ochre graffiti that was drawn after Egypt fell by later Christians to smack talk the ancient Egyptians. They were doing things like drawing little stick figures of Christ over the Egyptian gods and writing smack talk beside it. And I mention this because that seems to be exactly what the so-called Flower of Life is. We see characters that look like ICXC Nika and Theos Nilo. These are Greek. The one that looks like ICXC Nika means Jesus Christ conquers, and the one that looks like Theos Nilo means the god of the Nile. Put them both together, and you have Jesus Christ conquers the god of the Nile. When you actually read what's written here, instead of some fluffed up New Age hype, these symbols that everybody thinks is so love and light and namaste become the equivalent of writing "My God can beat up your God" on the Porta-John at a NASCAR race. Things like this aren't out of the ordinary. There's smack talk written in graffiti on the walls of Pompeii. It really does cast the so-called Flower of Life in a different light when you realize that it is not from ancient Egypt, as everybody is claiming. It's not from Atlantis, it's not from the Anunnaki or the Pleiadians. And that what was written there was meant to mock a conquered people. It was meant to mock the ancient Egyptians. Yeah, let that one sink in. So how do these circular designs fit into that? To understand that, we'll take a fast forward into the modern era with the Pennsylvania Dutch Hexenmeisters. Anybody who's been to Pennsylvania Dutch country, driven through Lancaster or Reading, has driven past structures and barns that have these brightly colored circular designs on the side. These are known as hex marks, from the German word hexa, which comes from the same origin as to put a hex on somebody. In Pennsylvania Dutch culture, you have something called the Hexenmeister. And a Hexenmeister is basically just a ritual magician that sits there and thinks about a subject, thinks about what they would like to have happen to a subject, puts an intent in their mind, and then draws out these designs, these hex signs, and they put them as decorative flourishes on their buildings and within their houses to make that sigil come true. And as you can see here, the so-called Flower of Life, Seed of Life that you see spread around is one of their designs that they call a rosette. And this is all just sigil magic. And sigil magic goes way back, at least to biblical times. We can find tombstones and various things that have the similar rosette on them, like you see in this one that has a menorah and a rosette on it. And this would be used to cast off or ward off evil or things that could interfere, necromancy or rising from the dead or who knows what. A lot of this is done with a positive purpose, as with the Pennsylvania Dutch putting things on their barn to have better yields and have healthier animals and all that. Good luck. But it again goes along with the intent of who is doing the sigil. So what it looks like to me is that somebody or several people went to the Osirion after the time of the Christianization of the Mediterranean, and they drew sigils to bind or hex or suppress what they saw as the old Egyptian religion, the old Egyptian gods, Egyptian demons, whatever they might have had in their little squirrely brain at the time. We know that sigil magic was used in biblical times, and that matches up with the time frame from the Greek graffiti. And we can also see on the same stones next to the larger flowers of life, we can see smaller designs that are more faded out, and those are exactly the same rosettes as you see the Pennsylvania Dutch use. The larger flower of life design is just an expansion of the smaller rosette design. And you can see that they're all over the stone. They're not laid out in any particular order. They're just kind of willy-nilly all over wherever the person decided to draw them, completely unlike everything else in that temple that is laid out meticulously as the Egyptians were prone to do. I've seen some interesting theories about the flower of life, that it was meant to represent the Metonic calendar of 19 years, things like that. But in this context of it just being thrown up on a wall all over with other half and partially drawn circles that are of varying quality, I don't believe that for a second. In this context, I really do believe that it was just put there as a sigil to hex that temple. So once again, just because this graffiti might be old doesn't mean it's ancient and world-encompassing and tells everybody how to make free energy and fly in cars and whatever nonsense that everybody is attributing to these designs. So now that you've seen where this actually comes from and that it's nothing like what anybody is depicting out there, where did all this new age modern crap about the flower of life even come from? It turns out that it comes from one guy. A person that calls himself Drunvalo Machizdik. As I understand it, Mr. Machizdik's birth name wasn't Drunvalo Machizdik, it was Bernie Perona. And for some reason, back in the 90s, Bernie became quite popular among all of the flakes in Sedona. Bernie's story changed over the years, but if you look at the earliest versions, he claims that he is a walk-in alien that has lived tens of thousands of years across solar systems, and he was a Pleiadian, and he went to Sirius, and then he incarnated into the body of a guy who met with the ancient... Wait, let me start this again, because I can't even keep a straight face saying this. He met with the ancient god Thoth that showed up like an old man just magically one day when he was doing an alchemy session, and Thoth gave him all of his ancient knowledge about the flower of life. I'm not making this up. I'll put it right on the screen here. You can read it yourself. Yeah. For the love of all that's good and sexy, if you do anything during this video, pause the video, read the pages that I just posted. This is the origin of the flower of life mythos. Everything that Terrence Howard's on Joe Rogan dancing around trying to bamboozle everybody with, this is the origin of it. And I think it speaks for itself. So Bernie apparently had his name changed to Drunvalo Machizdik, and he went out talking about the flower of life. He wrote a couple of books. He did seminars all over, whoever would have him, and he started spreading this idea. And for some goddamn reason, it caught on. If you've seen my previous videos, you know that I've got a massive database of occult and esoteric books that have all been PDF'd and OCR'd, and I've got the ability to basically search across all of it using natural language. It's my own version of a chat GPT for occult, esoteric, UFO, all these different subjects. And I did a search all the way back to the 1500s to see if the words flower of life, if the idea for the flower of life came from anywhere else before this guy, and I can't find any mention of it before about 1997 when he was being written about and talked about. So this whole flower of life thing was plucked like a magical seed out of somebody's ass that blossomed into the consciousness of humanity. Bernie McCheesedick and his cohorts have claimed that the flower of life was a universal symbol all over the world for sacred geometry, and it's been used for time immemorial by everybody up to and including the Atlanteans and people off planet and blah, 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 blah. Oh, I'm fucking nuts. Now keep in mind that they can't provide any actual tangible proof that designs like this were used for anything more than artistic flourishes. It's one of the easiest ways to cover a large area with a visually appealing design. Back when I was younger and I actually had free time, I was a hell of a good craftsman. I did a lot of leather work, and this is carved leather. And one thing that we used in leather work were stamps. You could take a stamp and you can just repeat the stamp across a large area, and you can make it look like a basket weave or any kind of interesting little design you want. And it's a really interesting and quick way to cover a large area without having to actually carve it out. But that doesn't mean that there was any meaning behind that artistic flourish. The human mind is programmed to notice symmetries. We're hunter-gatherers, after all. If you're out in the field and you notice a pattern of footprints, then that can get you fed. If you notice a pattern of a berry or of a specific leaf, and that symmetry, it stands out against the chaos of the nature around you, then you can get yourself fed. In the same vein, we consider facial symmetry and bodily symmetry as being beautiful because it stands out to the human mind. Not necessarily that it has any meaning, but that it stands out to the human mind because it stands out against the chaos of everything we see around us that is disorganized. The human brain is designed to put meaning onto things that are patterned and symmetrical. It is designed to trick you into thinking those things are more important. As an example, I have a design here that I first witnessed when I was having an ayahuasca journey with the Tibetan lamas of Cuzco. And as it ascends to the fifth dimension and its chakras align into the negative space of Planck's constant, we can see that it all amounts to nothing more than just a little prick. In fact, I've seen people reference a Leonardo da Vinci codex and some of his drawings that show this so-called flower of life pattern. But what they never do is actually read what he's saying on the page. Leonardo doesn't make any reference to this being some big esoteric metaphysical secret related to his Vitruvian man or human consciousness or any of the other claims. He's talking about it as a way to fill up a large area with an appealing design. But once again, that's a part of the story that you never see these people talk about because they'll never tell you what's actually written on the goddamn page. It's all part of the bluff, and these people have everybody bamboozled because they know damn well that nobody's going to look a little bit further. And it's sad, because all you need to do to get to the actual truth is look a little bit further, just as I have been showing you today. So there you have it, and I'd like to wrap this video up with one parting thought. I have here the Egyptian Book of the Dead. And the most important plate that I think is in the Book of the Dead is this, the weighing of the heart. And you see that the deceased is having his heart weighed in the Hall of Mayet, the Hall of Truth, to make sure that that person has been truthful, that that person has tried to live a life that was in accordance with actual reality. To the Egyptians, the highest manifestation of actual spirituality was being truthful. The twisted and childish nature of our modern world allows people to hide in fantasy. Fantasies like the flower of life or getting on the Joe Rogan podcast and lying your ass off for clout just cloud the human mind. They cloud the human experience. They hide what we are actually supposed to be doing to be living a good life. And in a really ironic and messed up way, lying about the fake flower of life and telling people that it comes from ancient Egypt, that it's part of ancient Egyptian wisdom, and that it's being rekindled and given back to the world, is exactly the opposite of actual ancient Egyptian wisdom that states that somebody should be truthful and not mislead people with falsehoods. So I'm doing my part to the best of my ability to try to bring you the next levels of truth. I might not have every fact straight, but I am trying my best to get every fact straight, and I'm not trying to hide behind ego or any childishness that I might not want to look the facts directly in the face. Would the childish part of me like it if more of this esoteric and metaphysical stuff was real? Of course. And I would love it if it was spoon-fed. I would love it if the stuff that was out there in public that was being spread on podcasts was actually based in reality. But it's not. I don't even like social media, and I'm a pretty private person, so I don't even like putting myself out there in front of people. I'm just doing the job that I think I need to be doing because somebody has to stand up and do it. It's troubling to me that the facts that I gave you in this video aren't terribly hard to find, but up until now I haven't seen anybody talking about it. So here I am, doing the job. I think things are about to get pretty bad in the world, and we don't have a lot of time left to align ourselves with the truth. I'm not here looking for clout, I'm not here looking for likes and follows, but I can promise you, if you keep checking back, I will keep doing my best to put out information that leads you down the right path. So I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope you stop by for the next one. Until then, thanks for watching.